Hello there. This is MD. With you here on Saskiano. Here we go again. We are in a new tutorial. In this After Effects tutorial, I am gonna show you how to create a countdown timer animation in Adobe After Effects and how to make it as a motion graphics template to use it in Adobe Premiere Pro. If you are interested, stay tuned. Today I'm showing you how to create this cool timer animation inside of After Effects using expressions. So that way the timer is responsive to the shape design. And we'll be showing you how to take all of the different shapes and elements and turn it into a motion graphics template that you can use inside of Premiere Pro. There are going to be a lot of technical steps in this tutorial. Let's go ahead and jump on it. So first let's create a new composition. I'm going to call this timer. And I'm working on a 4K resolution. Then hit OK. Next, let's use the text tool to type out 05. Or any number at all, as it will become irrelevant once we apply expressions sliders. You can change this to being your desired font. And I'll update the size. Then I'm going to use the align tools here to center it horizontally and vertically in the frame. Next, let's create a new adjustment layer. Right click and create a new adjustment layer. And let's press enter or return to rename it to control. So now this controls it just one layer. This is going to be the layer that we're going to apply all over expression controls to. Then go to effects and presets. And let's search for slider control. And then drag it onto our control layer. And let's rename this to time control. Next, from effect, search for checkbox control. And drag it onto our control layer. Let's rename this one to countdown. Now you must spell these even with the capitalization correctly. Because if you misspell it, the expression's not going to work. So make sure that you have it spelled exactly the way I do. So the expression will work. Now let's make our comp window a bit bigger for expression. Let's talk to open the text layer. And go to the source text. Next, press down the Alt key or the Option key on a Mac. And click on the stopwatch here. This will activate expressions. And create a new field from which we can then type out our Houstoner expression. Now I have my expression already typed out here in my notepad. You will find this expression text. Down below is my description box. You can copy and paste it into your field. So once you get it copied, you're going to go down into the field and press Command V or Ctrl V on a PC to replace and paste. And this new expression in this field. Now expressions are a little bit more complicated. So if you want to fully understand how it works, essentially it's JavaScript code. And what you can do with that is you can have this expression control a particular effect. So after it's pasted, you will then see that our number is set to 00. To change this value, so the expression will work. Let's say you wanted to count up to 10 seconds. So we can just change this value from the time control slider to 10. And now when you press the spacebar to play, the number will count from 1 to 10. Now if you wanted to count down from 10 to 1, all you need to do is check the checkbox on next to countdown. And now it counts down. Because that is what our expression told the slider to do. If you wanted to count down from 90, let's say you'll need to make sure that your composition is at least 90 seconds. So go to your hamburger menu next to the comp and select composition settings here. Be sure to update the duration of the comp to 90 seconds or 1 minute and 30 seconds or whatever duration that you want, then press OK. Now the comp will be longer, 90 seconds. But you will see that our layers need to be extended. So you need to select all your layers by holding Shift and then click the end of them and drag it out. So that way it meets the end duration of the call. This I'm just going to change my timer back to 10. For now. Because that's what I'll be working with. But we can always change this at any time. So now that we set up a part timer, now we can go in and create the shapes and the design to go along with the expression. So let's go and select the ellipsis tool. Then click on our comp and hold Shift to drag out a perfect circle. And then once it's created, make sure to move it below our text layer in the comp. Press enter or return. And let's rename this to circle. Just for organization. Then use the align tools to make sure it's in the exact center. Now let's duplicate this layer. To make our outer ring, press Command D on a Mac or Ctrl D on a PC. To duplicate the circle shape. Now we can press S on our keyboard to pull up the scale parameters of this new layer. And let's use this value here to make the circle a bit bigger. Now let's go up to the fill options and press on the word fill. And let's change the fill by clicking on this icon with a red slash. And then we can click on the word stroke to enable a stroke fill. And then you can play around with the stroke. With all set mine to around 60. Then use the align tools here to center it in the frame. Now I want it to be a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna go back to the scale controls here and scale it up. And then use the align tools again to make sure it's aligned. Now with this layer selected, let's search for fill from effects and presets. And then we can add this color fill to the layer. The default color is red. And I'm going to change this to yellow. But you can make any color that you like. Next, we're going to add the dashes to the spring. So to do that, we need to open the contents of our stroke circle and go to the stroke controls. As you scroll down, you'll find an area for dashes. And just click on the plus icon to add the dashes. And then open it up to adjust the dashes value. Let's just start with 20. But you can change this value at any time. But now you can see that we have our dentures. Now I want to add a glow effect on top of this ring. Go to Effects and Presets. And search for Glow. And now from Effective Controls, we can adjust the parameters. And here we can address the glow parameters that offer increased radius. And then I'll play around with the intensity level until I get it right. So I think it looks good. For now, end of the callback. And frame, and now I can turn the glow on and off. And you can see the effect that happens. So next I'm gonna show you how to animate this ring to move with the time countdown. So for the animation, look to duplicate this ring first by pressing Command D on a Mac or Ctrl D on a PC. On this duplicate, let's turn off the glow effect. Press E on your keyboard with a layer selected to pull up the effects on this layer. And then we can simply turn off the glow visibility. Then you can press T on your keyboard to bring up the transparency for the opacity controls. And let's reduce the opacity down to around 20%. And we can always change this later. Then let's press Enter or Return to rename this layer to Ring 1. And now let's rename the other ring to Ring 2. Now make sure that ring is on top of rings 1. Now we can turn the visibility off ring 2. And you can see we have the first ring that is more transparent. Without the glow. So we want to make the glowing bright. Dash ring on ring 2 to animate around on top of rings 1. So to do this. Let's go to ring 2. And let's open the contents. And from this little add icon. This is where we're going to add trim paths. Now open up the trim path parameter. To get the start and end. We need to add in another expression here. But only to the end parameters. Press Alt or Option on a Mac. And click on the stopwatch. Next to the end. And here we can piece in this expression. And again this expression I have here on the screen is available for copy and pasting. Down in my description box below. Now all this expression does is connected. And passed to the time control effects later. So it will change time based on the time control value number. As you see when it plays back. So this animation now will change if we change the time control value. So if we go back to our control there. And change the value to 30. And now when we play back. It's a much slower animation because the ball he was now 30. So let's go ahead and collapse the control layer. And now let's use the type tool to type out some other text. Give it context like time left. Or you can type out seconds for example. And you can update the font to make it less of bold font. If you like. After I type it out or use the selection tool to bring it below the countdown number. And then I'll make the font size a bit lower. And middle use the align tools. To align horizontally. And now I'm going to move the number. To make more space to do that. Or go to the number layer. And press P on my keyboard to bring up the position controls. And then I'll click on and move the Y vertical value to the left. To bring it up in the call. And I'll do the same to the time left position. As well until it looks just right. So now we have a fully functional animation in After Effects. And you can export the seniors in Premiere Pro. But what if you want to be able to customize this? And use it over and over again in Premiere Pro. This is where we can turn it into a motion graphics template. Using the Essential Graphics panel in After Effects. First, let's move the time left layer just below the control layer. For organization. Then to make it into a motion graphics template. Go to the window. Essential Graphics. And from the primary drop down here. We're going to choose the composition that holds all of our parameters. In my case. It's timer. Now we can begin to add in the values. That we want to be able to customize in Premiere Pro. So first let's start with the number of controls. Let's open up the controls layer. And from time control. Let's drag the slider control into our central graphics panel. In here. We can rename it. To time. From here. We can now use the slider to adjust the time value. So that way when you move it you'll see that the animation will change. It's responsive to the slider. And when you click on Edit Range. It'll let you choose the minimum and maximum values in the slider. So if your composition is 90 seconds. For example. You want the highest value then to be 90 seconds here. So I'll change my 100 to 90. And hit OK. And also my value to 20. And now let's add more parameters. Next, let's open up the countdown checkbox. And look to bring the checkbox into the Essential Graphics panel. And this will now enable you to choose if you want the timer to count up or down. If it's off it will count up. And if it's on it will count down. Next, let's add in our text values for the number. Let's talk to open the source text layer. And drag the source text into the central graphics. Then you can give this field a custom name. If you like that makes sense. And then you can select Edit Properties. And you can add and enable custom font selection. Font size adjustment info styles. And that way you'll be able to adjust and stylized font further in Premiere Pro. And let's do the same thing with the source text from the time left. So now let's move on to the colors. For the fill of the circle, I want this to be a gradient. So before adding the colors, let's go ahead and go to Effects and search for a gradient ramp. Let's practice on our circle layer. Then you can choose 2 colors of your liking to mix. You can also move the start color and color positions. That way you can choose how the 2 colors are mixed in the frame. Open up the gradient ramp effect. And drag on the start color in. And color into the central graphics panel. And then you can give them new names. Within the central graphics. Next, we can drag in the still color effect for ring 1. And ring to end the essential graphics panel. Simply open up the fill effect. And drag the color printer into the graphics panel. And do the same with the ring 1. This is useful here if you want to change the color of green once. It will be different from rinker 2. Let's say you want to color elements to be controlled by the same color control. So you want them both to change color at the same time. This is where we can use another expression control called the color control. For example, if you wanted to text layers here to be one color. This is where we can go to Effects and search for color control. Interact this on our control layer. Let's rename this to font color. And let's make the color white. Then we can go to Effects and Presets. And search for Generate Fill. And with both text layers selected in the comp, we can then double click on Fill. And will automatically apply the filling factor to both layers at once. Now they're both red by default. But we can pick whip these 2 fill effects to the font color control. from the control layer. To do that, press E to pull up the filling factor on both layers. And next, we can press Alt on a PC or Option on a Mac. And then click on the stopwatch next to the color fill. To activate the expression just like we did before. But this time we're gonna take the swirly icon, called the pick whip, and take the pick whip, drag on top of the font control here. And that way it's connected to the font color control into white. And that we can do the same thing with the second fill layer, where you're going to activate the expression. Then pick whip it to the font color control. The same one, and now they're both white. Then you could make the font color control here from the control layer. And drag it into the Essential Graphics panel. In here you can change the color. And now both the number color and the time left color change at the same time. You can control the colors of any number of elements that you want to be the same color by doing the same process. So let's say you want the two main colors to be the same color. You can do the same thing, but with the rain color fill. Now we need to control for the dashes, because we want ring 1 and ring 2 to have the same dashes. So this is where you go to Effects and search for another slider control. And drag it onto the control layer. And let's rename this to dashes with. Then we can open up bring to go to the content, open up the struct parameters factor. The dashes parameter in here. Press the Alt key or the Option key. And click the stopwatch to activate the expressions next to dashes. And then take the swirly icon again, the pick whip, and pick with it to the dashes width control. Now to the same thing to ring 1. It also activates the expressions. And then pick whip it to the dashes width control layer. You'll see that because the value was set at 0 here, there are no dashes. It's just a solid line. Which is one option for the look. But if we drag the dashes width control into the central graphics panel, we can then rename it to dashes width. And then you can control the value here. And you can see that both of the rings dash width are then in sync and the same value. And lastly, you can go in and do some formatting Essential Graphics panel. So that way it's easier to use in Premiere Pro. Some reason to go down to add formatting. And add a couple of groups here. And then I'll drag the parameters into each group. So that way it's better organized. You can see. I've organized it into timer controls, font controls, and color controls. And once you have it organized, then you can give your motion graphic template a name. And then you can move the playhead in the comp to the frame that you want to be, the preview poster frames. And then back in the central graphics panel, you can press set poster frame, and this will be the preview frame that you see in Premiere Pro. Then select Export Motion Graphics Template and save it to your local template folder. Now in Premiere Pro, you can search for a timer from your central graphics panel in the Premiere. And drag it into your timeline. And if you're working in a 1080p timeline, you can scale it to frame size by right-clicking on the layer. And then you can customize the controls here however you like. You can customize the time. You can customize the glow. And you can see I added in some more customization control, such as how to adjust the ring opacity and the glow controls and this particular motion graphic template. And once you're done customizing the controls, if you want to resize the entire graphic in the frame, use the effect controls from Premiere to scale it down and place it in the corner of your frame, using the position and scale motion controls from Premiere. And so that's all there is to creating this motion graphics template timer inside of After Effects. And here we go. We are done for today. If you want more tutorials like this, tell me down in the comments. Finally, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and also, if you are interested to learn more, take a look at our first channel, Everything PS. See you next time. Bye.